You remember the Egyptian protests?
Yes.
At least 170 people arrested at one point during the protests. 17 of them were women. They brought them in, and apparently hideous things happened, right? Some of them were stripped down naked, men and women seeing them. Some were given electric shocks. And apparently they were subjected to virginity tests. Now, why and what? Those are good questions. Now, people are complaining to the Supreme Council of the Armed Forces, basically the military in Egypt, saying you've got to do an investigation of this because this is outrageous. And they're being a little reluctant, unsurprisingly. And we're trying to get to the bottom of this thing. So first of all, Tina, do you have any idea what a virginity test is?
You know, I was going to make a Star Trek joke, but beyond that, no, I have no idea. And I was going to ask you, I mean, how do you prove that a woman is a virgin? I mean, because I know how they used to do it back in, you know, I mean, when you got married on your wedding night, you would.
Right, right. I mean, obviously, that's the ultimate virginity test, I suppose.
Well, but I mean, there, you know, there's blood and stuff
Right.
involved. I mean, how?
Right, but then you would, you know.
But.
Then they're not virgins anymore. I mean.
But
so
I mean, are they having gynecological exams? Is that what that means?
I think that that's what they're trying to indicate, as far as I can tell from the article. And I read, you know, into it, and I tried to figure out, hey, like, what are they doing here? But they do strip them down naked. And what I was most disturbed by, among, I mean, all of the disturbing things, including the test itself and the electric shocks, etc., was that they had men do it, right? So, like, if you're trying to be careful and you've got a woman, I mean, it's totally unacceptable, but at least there's some modicum, there's like a pretense that you're not doing it for your own sexual kicks, right? But you've got guys watching, you've got a guy doing that experiment on a naked young girl, whatever, that was at the protest. Come on, you know why you're doing it? You're doing it to, you know.
To subjugate her
Exactly.
and to intimidate her, and also to send a message to other women that if they're out on the streets, this is what's going to happen to them because they should be at home. And so it's a ploy to intimidate women, and I'm sure it's very effective. The thing that is upsetting about this is when the world was watching Egypt, we saw women and children out there. And once we saw women and children out there and that they were peaceful, you know, relatively peaceful protests, considering, I mean, this was not under a Gaddafi regime. I mean, they were not being, you know, there were people who lost their lives, and I'm not saying there weren't, but there were women out there with children and families marching in the streets, and that was what inspired this whole Arab Spring and this movement in the Middle East. That, you know, that Egypt, this country that has, you know, such a, I don't want to sound like Sarah Pan, such a rich history. And for, you know, 4,000 years they had been ruled by these, you know, some were tyrants, but and all of a sudden you had families out there demanding their rights. And to hear this story is really heartbreaking.
Right, and I remember reading in the middle of the protests when women started coming out and families started coming out, what a difference it made,
Yes.
right? And it sent a message. And that's why they were doing this in the first place, to try to prevent that kind of message. Now, you might be wondering why. What's the pretense for the virginity test? They said, well, if you were out there, you must have been a hooker. And so we're like, and if you're a virgin, that would prove you're not a hooker. That's what we're checking for. But if you're not a virgin, then if you're out in the streets with men protesting for democracy, well, then obviously you must have been a prostitute.
Right.
Right. And I mean, it just takes it to another level of despicable.
Right, of trying to shame women out of being political. No. And I'm sure it's very effective. I'm sure it had a very chilling effect over anybody who wanted to be out there. And, you know, and so what if you're a hooker, is what I say.
Well, that's a whole nother level.
Hookers should be out there too.
Right. It's a whole nother level of it, but to charge them with this and then to do these heinous
it's
virginity tests.
It's absolutely outrageous, and I hope that there's transparency, and I hope that they get to the bottom of it, and I hope that it never happens again.